the show, and it's a special one. We're going to talk about one of José's articles he recently wrote. Specifically, his review of The Mexican, a fancy new restaurant in Dallas, specializing in, wait for it, yes, you guessed it, specializing in Mexican food. But not just any Mexican food. Overpriced Mexican food and a $250 margarita named after a famous revolutionary. That revolutionary was Pancho Villa. Welcome to 10,000 Tacos, everyone, a show about the taco life. Each week, we bring you conversations and perspectives connected to the tortilla culture. We tell you about taqueros, we tell you about molineros, tamaleros, as well as scholars, journalists who help us understand and see Mexican food beyond the plate. My name's Isidro Salas. I am the proud son of a taquero, alongside Texas Monthly taco editor José Ralat. Thank you for joining us today. Now, the cocktail and the tortillas, we'll get to those shortly. But these two things underscore what José calls cognitive dissonance. What is up, José?
Hi, man. I feel like I'm in the hot seat.
Should.
Did someone put chilies in my office chair? Because, whoo!
Well, you know, the first things I want to talk about your article was, it was a critique, right? And rightly so. When I read it, it did touch on a few things. But let's first start out with the tortillas. Let's talk about specifically an appetizer, right? What made it according to your article, like a pretentious presentation? Give us some visuals, if you will.
Okay, so we ordered queso fundido.
Mm-hmm.
Classic Mexican botana appetizer, snack. It comes with chorizo, gravy, they call it, chiles. And it's brought to the table in a small, sizzling cast iron skillet. Probably about as big as a large tortilla. And then...
like 6 inches.
Yeah, maybe 8, but... the server comes over, dressed in black, and has 2 spoons. And he is grabbing the queso fundido and pulling it up in this really fancy show. So it stretches up, and he goes up about 1.5 feet. He mixes everything together, and I thought, well, this is strange. Why didn't they just leave it on our table? I'm very used to doing this myself, and this isn't tableside guac. This isn't cheap-ass tableside guacamole in a molcajete that was probably ordered from a wholesale company. Anyway, so he finishes mixing it up, and he gets a plate, and he puts 4 tortillas on there, and he spoons out all the queso fundido onto 4 tortillas. Again, I thought I was just going to get a pan with some tortillas. No, I was wrong, and I was disappointed because I just wanted queso fundido, man, with some tortillas. Because it's fun, right? However, they were served as tacos. There is nothing on the menu that indicates they'll be turned into tacos, much less become a show.
It's almost like going to a restaurant and seeing on the menu that they have burritos, and you order the burritos and they come back as tacos. Like you were just bamboozled.
I was shocked. Yeah. And they did the same thing with the barbacoa, another appetizer. It's like, what is going on here?
So for a little bit of, forgot to thank our audience. Thank you for helping us put on this show. So thanks everyone for joining us. But to put it in perspective, we're reviewing a restaurant you visited. Now, this was a fancy restaurant, right? Bougie? Is it like high class? Like, what was your first impression? And then, of course, we're talking about the appetizer, but the food it's not matching any of this, your experience at all. And we'll get down to your overall experience later on in the show, but it sounds like it's just not matching.
Oh boy. The whole thing started when I got the press release for this restaurant. And it noted that this is going to be the finest Mexican food experience in Dallas. Co-owned by the son of the founder of Gruma, whose flagship product is Maseca, the highest selling masa harina, dehydrated corn flour, which when you add water and you make tortillas, tastes like ass. So I'm like, well, I'm so confused. How are they trying to be the pinnacle of Mexican food and serve crappy tortillas? And they brought in this award-winning interior designer from Mexico City to dig out this place. This place is huge. It's got 3 private dining rooms. It's got 2 large main dining rooms and a pretty large bar. And at the bar, they serve a $250 margarita. We'll get to that in just a minute. But I spoke with this guy, Roberto Gonzalez Alcala, and Gonzalez outright told me that he was proud to serve tortillas made from Maseca. He was very honest with me. It was just insane how honest he was with me. And I was honest with him. I was like, look, I have to ask these questions as a journalist. Then I go to the website and there's a dress code. I thought dress codes went away with the pandemic's onset. Nope. So after 5 weeks of trying to get a reservation, I got one and I decided that I was going to break the number 1 rule of Latinos dining at Latino restaurants. Can you guess what that is?
Don't wear guayabera.
I wore a guayabera. It wasn't white. It wasn't black. It was burgundy.
Did people think you worked there?
No, all the servers were wearing black. So anyway.
5 weeks of waiting. In that time, I'm sure you have a day job. Of course, you have this great show that you have to do every Thursday at 11:04 Central. Every Thursday, by the way. Can we plug that in? And there's got to be some anticipation mixed in with disappointment. You've already said how disappointed you were. Like, was there any going back? Was there any room to turn it around and get impressed?
Yeah, sure. I always go into a restaurant with positivity. I want it to be great. I never want a bad experience. No, I guess that just made things worse.
What was the crowd like?
Oh, very Dallas.
All right, what is Dallas? Because, you know.
Okay, all right.
Dallas is in the country of Texas, and it's pretty big. I get that.
So there's a rule for women. There's no such thing as being overdressed. So they get dressed to the nines. There's a valet, and they park Ferraris and a Bentley up front. Beautiful cars, but they're showing off. This is all about show. Dallas has a lot of fucking show. And I'm dressed pretty nicely, right? Because guayaberas are dress shirts. And I go to the restaurant, and in come 3 guys wearing Dallas Stars hockey jerseys.
That's a dress code.
And they get sat down.
That's a dress code. That's a dress code violation.
Yes, absolutely.
Unless they play for the Stars.
No. No, they were doughy, guys looking to have a nice dinner before the match. I was pissed. It's like, oh, I could have worn a t-shirt. Anyway, it just gets worse after the appetizers. One after another. It just is a shit show. And I'll get to those, but let me begin with this. At the end of the meal, one friend and I spent $200 on what essentially were 23 tacos and a couple of sides.
I thought you just got the margarita and that was it.
No, I wasn't allowed to get the margarita. Fun fact about restaurant reviewing. Alcohol is not covered unless under special circumstances.
Well,
So I asked.
it obscures your judgment.
They flat out said no. Oh, fine. But the margarita includes tequila from a $1,600 bottle of Clase Azul, which is industrially made and is dyed. I have a bottle, or had a bottle of some of the lower end things. It was gifted to me. It was like $250 bottle of tequila in this Talavera tile porcelain bottle. It's beautiful. Anyway.
$1,600. Beautiful.
Well, that's no. So I pour mine into a glass and I can see the food coloring swirling in the glass. This is awful.
It's part of the show, man.
Now,
are they say, do they say margarita or do they say margarita? That's a difference.
They say margarita.
I'm saying margarita because I can't seem to nail down my Spanish accent right now.
As an aside, I prefer palomas. I call them Margarita's older, more refined sister.
And a paloma goes better with this type of food, right? It's more like an agua fresca with alcohol.
Yeah. It's fizzy, it's bright, it's got grapefruit in it. It's just fun and refreshing. A margarita will get you trashed and give you a hangover.
18 years of child support probably too. That's a different show.
I don't know. Do you speak from experience?
That's a different show.
Anyway, so
no late payments, by the way. Never got taken to court.
Let's get to the bulk of the meal. We ended up ordering several tacos, and it was one disappointment after another. Some of the food was under-seasoned. Some of the food was tasteless. The salsa was just overpowering. And I have a pretty high salsa tolerance. Anyway, one of these tacos is a filet with bone marrow taco. Now, if you know a little bit about higher-end Mexican food, you'll know that bone marrow is actually quite traditional. It's used a lot.
I'd rather have it on my menudo.
Really?
Yeah. That's it. When you cut the bones in half, you get that little bit of bone marrow in there in $5 plate.
I gotta tell you, I couldn't taste it. And bone marrow is rich, right? It kind of just coats your mouth. You can't taste anything else.
It's a little heavy.
Yeah.
For a little bit.
No, I didn't taste anything else. And it was just one bad experience after another. Nothing was evidence of the finest dining experience in Dallas.
Now, you described the taste as metallic, and that's a pretty harsh word, but I could relate to that. Like, most of us grew up on maseca tortillas, right? And it became a staple. There weren't, growing up in California, there weren't a lot of nixtamalization going on. There weren't a lot of tortillerias. If they were tortillas de harina being made, or they were just industrialized with maseca. So a lot of people could relate to that taste, but they wouldn't, this is what you eat every morning with your menudo, with your tacos, at lunch, or whatever time of day that you're having these meals. But we could relate to the metallic thing. That just doesn't make sense when you're in a supposed fine dining establishment. What did your friend say that you went with? Was he?
So my friend agreed with me. It was a fellow critic. His review is going to come out beginning of July. Anyway, he agreed with me and was just shocked that they would do this. The owners wanted to create an authentic Mexican experience. I'm sorry. First of all, that's a banned word. Authenticity doesn't exist. But if you're going for tried and true, like classic Mexican food, you can't do that with industrial tortillas.
Authenticity does not exist?
That's true.
Are you calling my ex-girlfriend a liar?
Yes.
You're right.
Yeah. No. See, so authenticity exists on paper, and to do this, you need to nixtamalize your own corn.
And people, see, here's what I think. People growing up on Maseca, I think that this is where the owner's son, or whatever his name is, Gonzalez, where he starts deviating, right? And we'll get into it after the FACO, because we want to talk more about that term. But how can he not make that connection, right? That either Mexican food, there's this dichotomy that people think it's cheap when it really isn't. And it should be more expensive, given that we're facing, it's a lot more expensive to get meat, operate equipment, labor, everything. And he does not make that connection.
Right, because he's a greedy capitalist who grew up privileged.
Entitled,
yes. You mentioned that a lot of people grew up on maseca or commodity tortillas made from it. That includes Guerrero, that includes Mission, that includes almost every supermarket brand. And most of them are owned by the makers of maseca. And it rose to popularity in the 80s when the Mexican economy collapsed and food prices skyrocketed, specifically corn prices skyrocketed. Maseca was invented in 1947, and it took more than 30 years. It took almost 40 years for it to catch on.
Because people were nixtamalizing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now it's everywhere. It's commonly accepted. It's almost taken for granted. And I have no problem with it. Yes, it tastes like ass. But you know what?
Some people like ass.
Some people like ass. So, like you said, people are accustomed to cheap Mexican food. They want cheap Mexican food. They expect it. And how do you do that?
By FACOing it up.
Yes.
So, and speaking of FACO, let's get to the FACO. We had initially a FACO in San Antonio, but I think this just blends in. This experience is the FACO.
This whole experience, this is one big freaking FACO.
Yeah.
And I think what you're referencing is the $250 margarita, right?
Yes. And it all blends, no pun, it all blends into the reason why I want to bring this up as the FACO, because we've talked about what a FACO is, right? It's the opposite of a taco. It can be a person who misappropriates, and usually, not to put a color to this, but usually a FACO is white, right? And at times we've been FACOs. There have been times where people have told us that we have done something that's considered a FACO violation, and we've taken that. But this is a case where this is probably one of the first of its kind. It's a fellow restaurateur, a person in the community, right? But the reason why there are FACOs is because of, and I love this phrase or these set of words, it's cognitive dissonance. You put that in your article. I love those two terms, or it's not a phrase, but it's a bias, right? But it's also this contradictory thinking.
That's exactly what it is. It's not being able to connect the dots.
Yeah. So the obvious one, and we'll talk a little, it is the drink, the Pancho Villa.
Yes.
Right. And he was quoted as saying, everybody knows him. He's a legend. So one, I didn't know him. I knew of Pancho Villa, but I didn't know about the history. I could see how people could get enamored on his history, but there's this unique little thing that he failed to know. And I think you reminded him, but he probably didn't admit it, that Pancho Villa was this Mexican revolutionary. He was part of the revolution of the early 1900s. I guess that would make it the 20th century. Yes. But tell us, why is this such a hypocrisy, I guess, or disconnect?
It is a disconnect, yes. Pancho Villa was a teetotaler. He refrained from drinking his entire life. The man was sober, and he prohibited his men from drinking. He was known to destroy cantinas and bars. He and his men, would go in there, they'd shoot up the place, they'd break bottles, they might light a fire. Pancho Villa even outlawed alcohol while he was provisional governor of Chihuahua between 19...
Yeah,
What?
I was going to ask you that. Because I think there's a coincidence there, right, with the United States.
Yeah, I mean, shortly thereafter, well, I should say the dates, between 1913 and 1914. Shortly thereafter, prohibition becomes the law of the land in the U.S.
Kavanaugh and Amy Board, they were in the Supreme Court back then?
No.
Wow. Yeah.
No.
What a coincidence. What people like, they want to ban.
Kavanaugh loves to drink, as we saw during his confirmation.
He likes beer.
He likes beer.
So that's the biggest one. That's the obvious one. What else? I was going to ask you if you knew a little bit more about Pancho Villa, the history. Why didn't he drink? Did you ever find that out? Does he explain why he's so adamantly against that?
I probably did. I don't remember now.
You were drunk?
There was just so much.
So going back to this restaurant, did he, Gonzalez, did he know that? Did he know that? Did you remind him or did he bring that up?
I reminded him.
So I don't think he knew, but he tried to play it off that, oh yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I suspected. That, oh yeah, I know that, that Pancho Villa didn't drink, but we're going to name this drink after him and charge a shitload of money for it.
Well, what I didn't put in the article is that Pancho Villa had a lot of support from the U.S. government. His headquarters were in El Paso, right, which is on the border with Juarez. Mm-hmm. He had the support, and then suddenly he did not. So the U.S. government tried to vilify him as a drunk. And so people think that he was a drunk. Not at all. A lot of alcohol producers have gotten rich off of Pancho Villa's likeness, even his horse, Siete Leguas, 7 leagues, named because that was a freaking workhorse. That horse could ride and ride and ride all day long. That horse was just as passionate about helping the common man as Pancho Villa was.
As I say, when you're hung like a horse, you don't need a Porsche. But that's a whole different conversation. But anyway.
Wow. When you let loose, you really let loose.
I'm just saying when you work, I meant to say when you work like a horse, you don't need a Porsche.
Yeah.
When you ride anyway.
It's just that there's so many things that are wrong with this restaurant, and point after point after point. And I really hope people read the review for themselves.
Just subscribe to Texas Monthly. Just do that. Tell them to subscribe. This is where you put in a plug for Texas Monthly.
Go to the food and drink vertical on TexasMonthly.com. Scroll down just a little bit, and there it is.
So, the second point of this cognitive dissonance, and again, cognitive dissonance, it's a very fancy term, but it's so prevalent in our lives on an everyday basis. When you're talking about political views, it shows up there. On a personal basis, for example, I used to smoke. And I used to smoke knowing that smoking was bad. That's an example, right? You know something is bad for you, but you still do it. It's a psychological thing. It's a fascinating thing in psychology because it really points to rational and irrational thinking without you knowing. The second point was industrialized tortillas and then calling yourself fine dining. When you asked him to confirm the tortillas, he said maseca, of course. And I got a sense that he was proud of that, right? And it makes sense that he is proud of that because his family's name is behind it. But what are your thoughts? Like, what's going through your head at that moment? I guess, sometimes when people say authentic on the show and your face like lights, I can just picture your
scrunches up.
What's going on at that moment?
What isn't going on? I'll tell you what's not going on. I'm not jumping for joy. I ordered extra tortillas by themselves. A waiter brought them over. And then another server came by with more, and I said, I already have them. They just wanted to make it worse for me. Anyway, I give it the blooming test, which is where you scrunch it up in your hand and then open your hand real fast. A nixtamalized tortilla will blossom and open up and flatten. A maseca tortilla will hold its shape. So it failed. I tried to roll it up with the hand movements of sliding your hands together. It didn't work. So I tried to make it a roll, and I took a bite of it, and I immediately winced. It was so sweet and disgusting. And then I shook my head, I scrunched up my face, and I thought to myself, I hope the owner sees me, because that guy was there. I watched him walk around the restaurant and nothing. It was just awful, man. And then it just lingered and just bleh. And so I took the hottest salsa that they had, which was an habanero salsa, and it wasn't spicy at all. And I just tried to put it on my tongue, tried to coat my tongue with it. No, nothing could get rid of that aluminum flavor.
It almost sounds like a nightmare.
It was. It was a total nightmare.
Oh. So, and then the third point that I wanted to discuss a little bit, and I'll tell a little story behind this, is the sheer disconnect, right? Obviously, trying to establish, first of all, you had to wait 5 weeks to get in there, which anybody knows the rule of scarcity. You could have a nightclub that's empty, but as long as you have a line, people think it's happening. And that was one of those, right? My story, I worked for a family business for quite a bit, and it was a very successful business, and I got to work alongside the family members. One day, one of the vice presidents, he was really into Mexican food, and he took culinary classes, so he really wanted to make food for a meeting. And he asked me about it, and he wanted to make chile verde. So he asked me a few things, I told him a few things, but he also wanted to put his own twist. Well, the day of the meeting came, and this was a pretty high stakes meeting at where we worked. There was a nice industrial kitchen, so he used that. And he asked me to taste it before he started to serve it to everybody, and I tasted it, and I was like, oh, it's actually pretty freaking good. So after the meeting, people are eating, and they're enjoying themselves, and I said, well, I want to go get a little bit more. Well, as I went in, the meeting was already over, all the event was mostly done, and one of the sons was there in the kitchen, and he was right above the pot of the chile verde that the VP had made. I want to get some more, but the son is sitting there. He takes a spoon, takes a tortilla, takes a spoon, puts it on the tortilla, right? And he proceeds to start eating it. And as it's falling down back into the bowl or into the pot of the cooked, and he's eating it, and it's all dripping down there, and I'm looking and he has no idea what he's doing. He's the youngest son of the owner of this company, and we're in our 40s at this time, or I'm late 30s, he's early 40s. We're around the same age, but he has no connection. Talk about privilege, talk about just disconnected. That sums up to me this gentleman that is trying to open up this fine dining, yet trying to lure people with the ultimate. The name of this place is called the Mexican. That is just, you want a target on your back, and you're going to say you're going to make fine dining. He didn't. The disconnect.
Yeah, it's just flabbergasting. Everything is, how these people aren't dumb.
Mm-mm.
But what they're doing is believing that other people are dumb, right? They're taking advantage of other people. And it's working. It took me fucking 5 weeks to get in there.
Was this the place where it was close to Cinco de Mayo?
Oh, yeah. So a friend and I are waiting for my friend's car to be brought up. And we see these overdressed folks Anglos waiting for their cars. And one guy is leaving and he says, I'll see you guys next week. It's Cinco. You know, like, goal!
Like the best
It's
day
Cinco!
of the world.
Yeah, it sucked. It was hilarious.
You have a horrible white voice.
You want me to talk dude. Like this? I can talk like this.
Cinco de Mayo, dude.
I can, or I can talk like this, and then I can say Cinco. I got a mouthful of cotton.
Oh man.
No. Now we're going off track, but yeah, I mean, it was just one bad thing after another. I felt so deflated when I heard that Cinco. Just like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Well, but my friend laughed. Out loud.
I want to, as we start wrapping up, and anybody like Rodrigo and Jorge, it's nice to see you down there, man. You guys want to come up and say hi or have any comments on this, please come up here, man. But as we start wrapping it up, I wanted to ask you, since your opinion or since your article, have you received any pushback or any opposition?
Opposition. No, people were very much in agreement with me. And it's actually kind of fitting that my Mexican neighbor is working on my lawn as we're talking about this.
Why, Jose?
Why? Because
Mexicans cut grass?
Jardineros. No, my neighbor's awesome.
That's confirmation.
He built our deck.
That's confirmation bias.
Anyway. He would flip out if he read this because this is not his experience. But I'll tell you what, we talk all the time about tacos. We talk about flavors and we trust one another's palates. He's a 67-year-old former plumber. Anyway, I did get a call from the PR company that represents the Mexican, and they were sweating it a little bit. The rep asked me if there would be any more bad news. Like, no. That's all the bad news I'm going to publish. What more needed to be said? What more? Let's talk to Rodrigo. What's up, man?
Hey, guys. Great takedown. I mean, it's deserved. Honestly, Jose, based on your description, you can't go around parading a certain attitude or feeling that you're trying to promote and then not back it up. The Mexican doesn't have to be the most quote unquote authentic restaurant or whatever. But since they made the claim, you better back it up. We've had this discussion before that there are taquerias that are more functional than supposed to be, a culinary experience. And there's restaurants out there that are strictly geared towards a certain type of crowd, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, But when you make these claims and you're going to aspire to be the true, authentic, original taste, you got to back it up. And I'm really glad that you were able to go there and give a really thorough examination of what's going on over there, because unfortunately, and I think this is really the point that I wanted to make, I know we get mad at Chipotle. I know that we say, oh, Chipotle did this and that, right? But this is what's really wrong, because folks that have these, this income that are able, they'll say this very with a lot of pride. Oh, I was at the Mexican and I had some of the finest tequila and I had an amazing margarita and I had the most authentic food, because they are claiming to be authentic. And the dubs are going to say that. They're going to run with it. As opposed to Chipotle, where I don't think they've ever said, or I don't know, but I don't remember them saying like, oh, we're authentic Mexican food. Right?
Some of their ads do, though, when they're talking about the people. They don't even call them taqueros, but some of the Chipotle ads I see that, try to season the carne asada. But they're hinting at what you're saying, though, Rodrigo, and that's a great point.
But Isidro, a hint and not saying it is much different than flat out saying we are authentic.
Yeah, we have to hold the fire to both. It reminds me of the conversation a few weeks back with Jason Stanford. He the co-author of the Forget the Alamo book, and when he had no there was a section in that talk when there was no connection between the writer of Eater and how San Antonians take this kind of stuff so serious, because it's related to our history. And I say us because I'm Mexicano. And when somebody opens up a restaurant and calls it the Mexican and doesn't deliver, it's sort of like that. It's very just, the words that just keep coming is disconnect. And we got to hold them to the fire on that. And so great point, man.
You know, the barbacoa would have been fine if I was in a modest taqueria. Would I have cared about the tortillas if they hadn't said this restaurant was going to be the finest ever? No, I wouldn't even have given this restaurant my time. Now, you have different types of taquerias, right? One of which I call the Pancho Villa, which is a taqueria that's quite average, that has a lot of photographs of Pancho Villa everywhere. And then I have a workers' taqueria. I do not expect either of them to have nixtamalized corn tortillas. They're servicing modest people or people that just need a quick, high-calorie meal to work, right? So you don't need nixtamal. You just need a tortilla, because really at that point, it's just a vessel. It's conveying all the meat and all the things that you need to keep going through the day. I got no problem with that. And that's part of dining. That's part of reviewing, is you have to look at the restaurant and figure out what are they trying to do. Well, the Mexican is trying to do one thing while doing another. It cannot be the best when it wants to be, because it doesn't have nixtamalized corn tortillas. I really want to end this on the top quote, just sort of let everything out, exhale negativity, inhale tacos. So what's our top quote?
Well, thanks for that, man. But and thanks, Rodrigo, for coming up here and chiming in, man. Appreciate your comment as always. So today's talk quote, and again, a talk quote is a quote with a little bit of a taco twist to it. And it goes like this. Don't waste your sauce on tacos you will never eat. And simply put, your sauce is your energy. There are tacos out there that aren't worth your energy. Your sauce is precious, so guard it and use it wisely. And in a case like this, you going to an establishment like this, it's wasting energy. It's wasting sauce. So
all right, everybody, thank you for joining us.
So anyway, if you want to be considered as guests on the show, we regularly have guests. This was a fun episode. We needed to get it out there for many reasons, but we usually have guests on. What are some future guests, Jose?
Later on, we're going to have poet Eddie Vega. We're also going to have my friend Avi Khan, who has a show on YouTube, has podcasts, and was the host of Cheap Eats on the cooking channel. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have some really great guests lined up with some really great topics.
And so, again, for anybody wanting to join us in a future episode, please send us an email. We have a website called TAQUOTE.com. We secured that domain, Jose. Isn't that cool?
That is so cool. We are the taco podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Not like the Mexican, not the Mexican taco podcast. No, that we would. But anyway, your email is Jose@TAQUOPodcast.com, and mine is Isidro, Isidro, @TAQUOPodcast.com. Send us comments. Send us even suggestions for future episodes. We welcome any of that.
We love hate mail.
And where can people follow you, Jose?
TexasMonthly.com. My social media handle is at Taco Trail. I am a prolific tweeter.
Yes.
I don't just tweet my stuff. I try to tweet news. And for example, we really can't talk about it now, but Taco Bell just brought back its Mexican pizza
Abomination.
today.
Yeah. So besides Elon Musk, you're the second most popular person on Twitter nowadays. So follow him
No,
on
I'm
Twitter.
not. No, but
Or is that Truth Social? That's
I mean,
what I meant.
Thank God I'm not on that, and thank God I'm not as popular as Elon Musk, because all my hot takes would get me in trouble.
Yes. So, well, thanks.
And what about you?
Well, I'm at Instagram and Facebook. I'm trying to wean off social media, which is a suicide if you're trying to promote stuff. But, you know, it's good for and I just discovered this new word called mental health. It just came to me a few days ago. So I'm a Gen X kid.
Tacos.
Yeah, I'm a Gen X kid, man. We dealt with it in different ways.
Yes, we did.
But
Yes,
social
we did.
media is it's fun, but it also grabs you. It's a trap. So, but I'm at 10K Tacos. So I try to post some reels. I have 7 cats, and we're in the process of moving locations. So you won't find me that much on there because I'm moving. But anyway, yeah, man, this was fun. Thank you for being open about this. It's tough to be in that position, but you take your job serious, and it's important for people to see the other side of the tortilla, so to speak. That should have been a freaking taco, man. There are 2 sides to a tortilla. Damn, I'm on fire.
Next week, maybe.
All right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, once again, I want to thank Rodrigo for coming up here and chiming in. Jorge, thanks for nice to see you. Martha and Chris, thank you for joining us. I think I missed one more person. Derek, sorry about that. Thank you for being there. For José Ralat, I am the proud son of a taquero, and this is 10,000 Tacos.